power lunch. As you know, we record these calls and place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And with that, our topic of discussion today is how you can securely trigger GitHub workflows and track their progress using Azure Logic Apps. So this is what we're going to be discussing. Just want to give a heads up that we will be taking a break and we will be starting back from 16th. So just want to give a heads up that next 3 weeks we won't have Azure Power Lunch. We will start from 16th. So there will won't be any Power Lunch on 26th, on 2nd, and on 9th. Okay. So with that, let's quick agenda. Here is our quick agenda. We are going to be talking about what are some of the talking about the different component of the solution. What are GitHub action workflows? What is GitHub apps for authentication? We are going to be using that, and then how we put everything together. Okay, so it's going to be mostly a demo fill session. You know, GitHub workflows, they're used for um, they're used for um, uh, tasks like they're used for tasks like CI/CD testing, and they allow end-to-end automation. They're very similar to Azure DevOps pipelines. Okay, so with that, the next part of the solution is the authentication. So we're going to be using REST API. So we are going to be using Logic Apps, but we will be calling REST APIs from there. So, and these gonna be GitHub REST APIs. So how you authenticate those? You know, so that's where you can use PAT as well, but we are going to be using GitHub Apps. This is a modern way to authenticate to access GitHub functionality. It allows you to use JSON Web Token, JWTs, and all that. So we will be using that. Okay. Um, and then for we'll be using Logic Apps to trigger GitHub workflows and track. So idea is that we will use the Logic app as a workflow mechanism. You know, that's our goal. And we will use in different activities to do those tasks. So that's the plan. So think of it. We have different parts and pieces, and Logic app is the glue that puts everything together. Here is a quick steps just to give a high level idea what we are going to be doing. We are going to be doing we are going to be creating a GitHub app. And when you create a GitHub app, it gives you a private key to sign your token. And I will explain those steps as well. We will store that GitHub private key, basically a base 64 hash of that key in a key vault. Then we will be using a Logic App standard. Yes, in this case, we will have to use a Logic App standard because we will be using an inline code activity. And in regards to an inline code activity, you have to use a Logic App standard. Okay. So, as I said, we will create a workflow, assign it an MSI, and use that MSI to access that key from the key vault. Then we will have a C sharp. In this my case, we am using C sharp inline activity to create the installation token. So that piece will require some C sharp code, and for that we are using C sharp inline activity. Okay, so that's what we're going to be using. And then uh, in order to for the tracking of the workflow, just keep in mind when you dispatch your workflow using an API in using GitHub API, no matter what you do, it doesn't give you a tracking ID or a run ID because it's an async process. Long story short, what's going to happen is you have to find a way to get that run ID. And the way we are going to be doing, we are going to be using workflow inputs, and I will explain that in that input, we will pass a deterministic ID that will be used for the workflow name when it is run. And then through the APIs, we will get the um, all the workflows, and then we will filter based on the name. And then from that name, we will get the when we filter it based on the name, we will get the run ID, and then that's how we're going to find out when it is complete. Got it? So that's kind of a high level uh, flow of the things. Any questions? Okay, so let's quickly move on. It's a demo field session, so I'm not gonna waste time on the slides. First of all, this is my very simple repo. It has a C# project. And by the way, all of the documentation about the workflow is here, and I will go over that as well towards the end. So very simple C# project. This is my, in that I have a GitHub workflow. And as you can see, there are two inputs. One is the log level and one is the call ID. And if you see here, I am building the run name based on that call ID. That's all I'm doing. And that's how we are going to be tracking it. So that's one way. There are other ways of doing that, but to me, I think this makes much more sense, much more predictable. Okay. And let's go into the GitHub settings. When you want to create an app, what you need to do is you need to go into the developer settings. In the developer setting, I already have this app created. You do a new GitHub app, you give it a name, you provide all the properties you need to provide what type of permission you will be needing. Okay. Once you do that, at that point, you create the app. The thing is, we have only 30 minutes, so I'm not gonna create the app. I'm just gonna show you what I have in this app. By the way, always note down these two IDs. You can use either the app ID or the client ID when you are creating the token. Just keep in mind, um, they recommend now to use the client ID. They means GitHub. Okay, so that's that. As you can say, use your client ID instead. Second thing is, this is your private key. If you haven't uh, kind of kept the private or kind of keep track of the private key when it was created or somehow lost it, you may have to generate a private key again and get it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So got the private key, everything is there. Um, one more step, you have to install this GitHub app. So without installation, this will not work. So that's the second step. You click on install app, and when you install it, you can make it applicable only to the GitHub repo that you're interested in or to all repos in your account, okay, that you can do. So the way, if you want to see if it is installed or not, go into settings. So basically, you can go from where my picture is, I click on it, and then I click on settings, and then I come back down and then I click on applications. Yes, Logic App Workflows is installed. You can go into configuration. I configured it to all repository, and that's it. Okay, so that's my choice. It's a demo, all of it. Okay, so that's the GitHub app side of it. Okay, once you set it up, the next part is getting the token, and that's um, that's very important because there are two steps to it. So I'm just going to take you directly into the code for it, and that code for time being I have pasted in this Visual Studio. Okay, let me know if you can see it. I'm going to increase the font size a little bit. It's hard to see the code in in the Logic App. So these are usual stuff. These are all the libraries that are included. Then I have added my app ID. Oh, sorry, I missed one thing. Installation ID. How are you gonna get the installation ID? You have installed the app. Look at this. You see this integer, or sorry, this kind of this ID. This is your installation ID. So make a note of it. So you will need app/client ID for the app and the installation ID. Installation ID you will get where the app is installed. App or client ID will come from app itself. Got it? Please feel free to ask if you have any questions. So that's where you set the installation ID, repo owner, repo name, all that fun stuff. Then what I'm doing here is ignore this. I am getting the action output get secret, and this is basically boilerplate code to get the key from the uh, from the keyboard. Okay, you got the key, then you basically gonna, it's a base 64 encoded, so you're gonna reverse it. You're gonna get the actual key. You did all that, then you create into a character array, and then you import it in the RSA because we are gonna be using RSA SHA-256 algorithm as a signing key. This is all documented. It's in the documentation of GitHub. Okay. Next, you create the JWT token. So basically, this is security token handler. You're creating token and you assign name of the issuer is app ID. Expires, by the way, it can only be there for 10 minutes. Okay. So you do 10 minutes and then issue that sign in credential. This is the credential that you created. It's going to create the token and sign it. Just keep in mind, this is not the final token. This is one step. There's another step as well. The next thing is you are going to call the installation endpoint in GitHub using this token. So this is bearer, authentication, and you call it. And once you call this thing, it's gonna return you the actual token. So you see here, I get the actual token. Basically, it's gonna be in one of the property in the response that is returned. Okay, and I mean the code is there. You can experiment with it, get the token, and I'm returning this token. Okay, so now I'm gonna go into a partial workflow that I have to get the token so I can show it to you. Okay, so this is the partial workflow that I have done. This is just to get the JWT, and this is the same code. The reason I want to show you the code over there, it's much easier to see. And let's say if we run it. Okay, so we are going to run this thing and it's going to just run. And here is how I'm passing it. So I got the token in the C sharp, then it's returning it as a message. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that token and I'm putting it in the authorization. Okay, so let's see how the run happened. Hopefully, let me run it again. Okay, never mind. Let me run it again. Not sure what's. Sometime it gives this error, so I think I need to check. Okay, yeah, it's successful now. I'm not sure there's a glitch or something. So you see, I executed it, it passed it, and as input, you see, it did not show the token. And then we are getting the run. So I know a run ID. I'm just calling this method to get that the run details. Okay, that's one part of it. Any questions? So basically, think of it. We created the GitHub app, we created a key vault, put the key in the key vault from that app, and then got the app/client ID as well as installation ID and get the token. Okay. Now let's look at the full workflow. Here is the mega workflow that I have. And what I'm going to do is to make more space, I'm going to move things around. Okay. So here we go. Very simple. This part is simple. I am initializing variable and you will see a workflow ID. I'm creating a GUID and assigning it to the workflow ID variable. Okay. And then this is the installation token. This is coming from the code that we ran previously from C sharp. Got it? Then we do submit workflow and look at the submission of the workflow. I mean, it's a post method. I'm passing the installation token, all of that. But look here, as a call ID, I am passing this workflow ID. that I have created. So what's going to do is it's going to create when it's going to run this thing, the GitHub workflow, it's going to create that workflow with that name. There's a name and there is an ID. And ID we need to do the API, but name is also there. And when we get all the collection, we can get the name. Okay. So that's that. And then what it's going to do is, um, it's going to do a get workflow run. So it's going to sleep for a delay for 15 seconds, and you can change the delay and all that. And then it's going to do the get workflow runs. So what it does is it get all the workflows that were dispatched. Okay. So once it gets all the workflow that has been dispatched, then ignore that email. I was just testing something and I added that email. This is not relevant. Okay. Parse JSON. What I do is I pass. This is the JSON schema of the object that I get. So I'm getting a collection. From that collection, I am building this object and then I'm filtering this, and I am filtering it based on this name. So what I'm checking on it, the body name is equal to this. Okay. If that name is there, then it means that the workflow has processing has started. Because remember, when you dispatch a workflow, it does not immediately start. It may take some time, because that's why it's an async method. So you cannot just say, hey, I dispatched the workflow and I can pick it up. No. So what may have happened, there are many other workflow going on. So that's why I may just go ahead and continue looping through. But let's say that if I got that workflow that is there, I will go in, and the next thing I do, ignore this email. I am checking the condition if the body status is complete. Got it? So think of it. Workflow. I ran the workflow, dispatched the workflow. I got the workflow collection. And at that point, what I'm doing is I'm looking through the workflow collection for my workflow that I submitted. If it is there, I am checking its status. If it is completed, everything is good. I move on. What I do is I get the workflow ID. Look, I get the ID of the workflow, and then I run the workflow. I get the run info and run it. Okay. So this will continue repeating. So what I'm going to do is I have this thing running here. So I am going to call it using what we call. So this is running. Let's see. And by the way, it will take 20, 30 seconds. So think of it. It's going to be creating token. It's going to be calling submitting, dispatching the workflow, and then it's going to be getting all the workflows and going through them, finding the workflow that I am looking for. And from that point on, it's going to get the ID of that workflow if that workflow is available. And then it's going to give me all that information about it. Look, this is so this is the workflow. As you can see, we dispatched it. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the name that we created. That's how we are querying it. Okay. And this is the ID. You can query based on ID, but you cannot query based on name. So that's why I have to get the collection and loop through it. At least that's what I'm able to find. Okay. Um, so let's look at different runs. So this was the run that we just have. Let's go back here, and you see we get the installation and then submit workflow. I just want to show you the get workflow runs. It gives us, you see, this is the big body that it gives us, all the workflow that ran through the dispatch. Okay. And if we do the filter array, this is the output. So it gives us this, this is the item that we have gotten from that. So if I go into Visual Studio, file, new, file, JSON. So I'm just going to paste it here. So this is, so it filtered out, this is the workflow. Remember, the status is in progress. Okay. So it's going to keep looping. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to keep looping and until unless it gets the information and give it back to us. So that's what it is doing. So it will showing all the loops. So there, as you can see, there are two loops. This is one of two. This is two of two. If I go into the second one, that it should show us complete. So if I copy it here and if I edit, select all, Control V, go back up, look, completed. So you see what I'm saying? So looping through it, found it completed, and then we get the run back. And this is the thing that we did, basically assigning it a name, a deterministic name, so we can filter it out from there. So that's basically end to end. And what I have done is I have this GitHub repo. In that, this is the workflow, very simple workflow that I have. And the main thing, as I said, this is the call ID. So you can take a look at it. This is a kind of a main page. The README goes over what are the different steps that we are doing and then link to all the documentation. This is the workflow documentation. Okay. So it tells you, by the way, I used if you are in a workflow, let's go in here in the designer, use the AI, download workflow summary. It's very useful. And it's kind of, I mean, I instead of filling this detail by hand, oh man, it does it for you. So for example, here it goes in, it tells you like what differ a different step, what is trigger, what are different action. So you can look at it, you can understand what different things in this are doing. Okay. Um, and then I also have the token code. The token code that we used, it's there. This is the entire token code that we use to generate this thing, that's there. And basically, that's that. And then finally, the code for the workflow itself, I put it here. If somebody want to play with it, I have removed some of the kind of personal stuff from there. I mean, personal mean like, some information like my email and things like that. So you will have to update that information. But other than that, everything, I mean, it may need some tweaking, but you can get an idea once you load this workflow. So if you want to play around with it, take a look at this repository. I have provided a link to it in the presentation towards the end. So you can go ahead and take a look at it. Any questions, folks? This is the link. Okay, so just a quick recap. So today we talk about how we can use Logic Apps to submit workflows, GitHub workflows, and track their progress. So in that, what we are using is we are using GitHub apps for authentication and Logic app to kind of stitch the entire process together. What GitHub app does is it gives you a private key. We put that private key into a key vault, access that key from the key vault using a standard Logic App workflow. Just keep in mind, you're going to be using a standard Logic App workflow because um, that workflow requires an inline C sharp. Okay. So, and then the part where we generate the token based on that key and the information, we will need an inline C sharp. That code is there in the repo. We talk about it. So once we get the token, then we call the dispatch workflow API, dispatch the workflow, and as an input, we pass a deterministic run name. And that run name is used by the workflow, as you can see, as you have seen. And then what we do is we query all the workflows and find out where is our workflow there and what is the status of it. If that workflow is completed, then we move on. Otherwise, we keep looping. We keep getting that status using the same API, is the same token that we got, installation token. And as you know, that there are two steps to getting the installation token. First of all, you build a JWT token, you sign it, and then you use that as a bearer to call the installation API and get the installation access token, and that's what you use to call the API. So that's kind of end-to-end process. All the artifacts are there in the GitHub repo. It's a public repo, and I have provided a link to it in the end. And we have 1 more minute, so just want to ask one final time, any questions, folks? Okay. So if there are no questions, I hope everybody have a wonderful day and have a great weekend as well as happy holidays and a very happy new year. See you on back on 16th of January. Um, yeah, thank you very much.